Homeless mom cries after Messi's gift saves her family. How will this story unfold? To find out, watch the video to the end. But first, please subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications to get more stories like this. The cold wind swept through the city streets, sending shivers down Maria's spine as she pulled her two children closer to her. They had been living on the streets for months now, moving from one shelter to another, surviving on whatever scraps they could find. Life had not always been this way. Just a year ago, she had a small apartment, a steady job, and dreams of giving her children a bright future. But fate had other plans. A sudden accident had left her husband unable to work, and the medical bills had drained their savings in an instant. With no support system and nowhere else to turn, Maria found herself and her children homeless, struggling to make it through each day. She sat on the sidewalk, hugging her little ones tightly, watching as well-dressed strangers passed by without a second glance. She understood. People were busy with their own lives, their own problems. They couldn't stop for someone like her. And yet, every day, she prayed for a miracle. That miracle arrived in the most unexpected way. It was a crisp morning, and Maria had just woken up from an uncomfortable night under a bridge. She had managed to find a half-eaten sandwich in the trash for her children, but she knew it wouldn't be enough. Hunger gnawed at her, but she ignored it. Her children came first. Just as she was about to head towards a nearby shelter, a car pulled up on the side of the road, stopping a few feet away from her. At first, she thought it was just another wealthy passerby. But then, the door opened, and a man stepped out. Maria's eyes widened in disbelief. Lionel Messi. She blinked, thinking she must be hallucinating. There was no way the legendary footballer was standing in front of her. It had to be someone who looked like him. But as he approached, she realized it was really him. His familiar face, his warm eyes, it was unmistakable. Messi crouched down to her level, his gaze filled with kindness. "Hola," he greeted softly. "Are you all right?" Maria could barely find her voice. We're okay," she lied, forcing a weak smile. She didn't want to beg. She didn't want pity. Messi glanced at her children, who were staring at him in awe. He reached into his pocket and pulled out some cash, but then he hesitated. It was clear that money alone wouldn't solve Maria's problems. "How long have you been living like this?" he asked gently. Maria swallowed hard. "A few months." Messi nodded, taking a deep breath as if processing the weight of her words. He looked around, as if searching for a solution. Then, he did something no one expected. He stood up and made a call. Maria couldn't hear what he was saying, but from the tone of his voice, it was clear that something big was happening. A few minutes later, another car pulled up, and a well-dressed man stepped out. He greeted Messi with respect before turning to Maria. "Senora," the man said with a kind smile, "we would like to help you." Maria's hands trembled. What do you mean?" Messi knelt back down, this time looking directly into her eyes. "I have a foundation that helps families in need," he explained. "I want to get you and your children into a home. A real home." Maria's breath caught. A home? A roof over their heads? Was this really happening? Tears welled up in her eyes as she clutched her children. Why are you doing this?" Messi smiled softly. "Because everyone deserves a second chance." Maria broke down, sobbing into her hands. She had spent so long being ignored, feeling invisible, that she had forgotten what kindness felt like. And now, here was one of the most famous men in the world, giving her something she thought she had lost forever, hope. The well-dressed man, who introduced himself as part of Messi's charitable team, helped Maria and her children into the car. As they drove away, Maria looked out the window, watching Messi wave at them, his expression full of warmth. For the first time in a long time, Maria believed that things could get better. And it was all because of one man's kindness. The car ride felt surreal. Maria clutched her children tightly, afraid that if she let go, she would wake up and realize this was all a dream. The man sitting beside her introduced himself as Alejandro, the director of Messi's foundation. He explained that they had shelters and rehabilitation programs for struggling families, but this case was special. Messi had personally requested that Maria and her children be given a place to stay, with long-term support to help them rebuild their lives. "You'll have a safe place to sleep tonight," Alejandro assured her. "And tomorrow, we'll discuss how we can help you find a stable job." Maria nodded, still unable to process what was happening. Just that morning, she had been scavenging for food, worrying about how to protect her children from the cold. Now, she was sitting in a luxurious car, being driven to a shelter personally arranged by one of the greatest footballers in history. When they arrived, Maria's breath caught in her throat. The shelter wasn't what she had expected. Instead of a cramped, overcrowded building, it was a warm, welcoming space filled with other families who had fallen on hard times. The rooms were clean, the beds freshly made, and there was even a small play area for the children. A woman greeted them with a kind smile, handing Maria a fresh set of clothes. "You can stay here as long as you need," she said. "We'll also help you with job training, and once you're ready, we'll assist you in finding a permanent home." Maria's legs felt weak. She sank onto the bed, pulling her children close as tears streamed down her face. This wasn't just a temporary fix. This was the beginning of a new life. That night, for the first time in months, Maria slept without fear. The next morning, Alejandro returned with more news. "Messi wanted to check in," he said, handing her a phone. Maria hesitated before taking it, her hands shaking. "Hello," she said softly. "Hola, Maria," Messi's voice came through the line. "How are you?" Maria choked back a sob. "I don't even know how to thank you." Messi chuckled. "You don't have to. Just promise me one thing." "Anything," Maria said immediately. "When you're back on your feet, help someone else who needs it," he said. "Pass on the kindness." Maria swallowed hard, nodding even though he couldn't see her. "I promise." Over the next few weeks, Maria focused on rebuilding her life. With the foundation's help, she found a job as a kitchen assistant in a local restaurant. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Every night, she returned to the shelter, where her children played freely, no longer worried about where they would sleep. Then, one day, Alejandro came to see her again. "We have one last surprise for you," he said. Maria followed him outside, where another car was waiting. Confused but trusting, she climbed in, her children by her side. They drove through the city until they reached a quiet neighborhood. It was nothing fancy, but the houses were well kept, the streets peaceful. They stopped in front of a small house with a white fence. "This is your new home," Alejandro announced. Maria's heart nearly stopped. "What?" "Messi wanted to make sure you had a real chance," Alejandro explained. "So he arranged for you to have this house, rent-free for the first year. By then, you'll be able to stand on your own feet." Maria collapsed to her knees, sobbing. She had never expected this. A home. A real home. Her children squealed with joy as they ran inside, their laughter filling the empty space. Maria stood at the doorway, overwhelmed with gratitude. She had gone from homeless and hopeless to having a future. And all because one man chose to care. The first night in their new home felt like a dream. Maria sat on the floor of the small but cozy living room, watching her children sleep peacefully in their beds. Just a few weeks ago, she had been holding them close on the cold pavement, whispering promises she wasn't sure she could keep. Now, those same promises were becoming a reality. The next morning, Maria woke up early, determined to make the most of this second chance. She had never been afraid of hard work, and now she had a purpose, to provide a stable life for her children and to honor the kindness that had been shown to her. She reported to work at the restaurant, giving it her all, eager to prove herself. The owner, impressed by her dedication, began training her to prepare meals, giving her more responsibilities. Every evening, she returned to her home, where her children greeted her with hugs, telling her about their day at school. With Messi's support, the foundation had helped enroll them, ensuring they had the education they had once been forced to abandon. Maria couldn't believe how much her life had changed. One afternoon, after work, she received an unexpected phone call. "Maria, it's Messi," the familiar voice said. Maria nearly dropped the phone. "Mr. Messi." I don't know what to say." Messi laughed. "I just wanted to check in. Alejandro tells me you're doing well." Maria's voice trembled with emotion. "I don't have words to thank you. You saved my family." "I didn't do anything special," Messi said humbly. "You did the hard part. You kept fighting, even when things seemed impossible. I just helped open a door." Maria wiped her eyes, overwhelmed. "You gave me hope." Messi was silent for a moment before saying, "Remember what I asked you?" Maria nodded. "Yes. To help others when I can." "Good," Messi said. "Because I have a feeling you'll do something amazing one day." Tears streamed down Maria's face. "I promise, I will." Over the next few months, Maria continued to grow. She worked tirelessly at the restaurant, saving every penny she could. She took evening classes to improve her skills, determined to create a better future. Slowly, she started seeing progress, not just in herself, but in her children. They laughed more. They felt safe. They believed in a future. One day, an idea struck her. She had always loved cooking, and now she was learning real culinary skills. What if she could use that to give back? What if she could help others, just as Messi had helped her? With the help of the foundation, she started a small community food program. It began with just a few meals a week, given to struggling families. But soon, more people joined her efforts. The restaurant she worked at supported her cause, donating extra food and supplies. Before she knew it, she had built something bigger than herself. One evening, after serving meals to a group of homeless individuals, Maria received another call. "Maria," Messi's voice came through. "I heard about what you're doing." Maria smiled, looking around at the volunteers who had come together to help. "I just wanted to give others the same chance you gave me." Messi chuckled. "That's what I hoped you'd say." Maria took a deep breath, her heart full. "Thank you, Mr. Messi. Not just for what you did for me, but for believing in me." "I always believed in you, Maria," Messi said. "And I always will." As the sun set over the city, Maria stood in the doorway of her home, watching her children play in the yard. She had once thought life had given up on her. But now, she knew the truth. Sometimes, all it takes is one act of kindness to change everything. And that kindness had not only saved her life, it had given her a purpose. Maria smiled, feeling the weight of her past finally lift. She had been given a second chance. And now, she was determined to pass it on. Months turned into a year, and Maria's life had transformed in ways she never could have imagined. Her children were thriving in school, their laughter filling their home, a home she could now call her own. The small community food program she had started had grown into a well-organized initiative, with volunteers and donors helping expand its reach. Families in need were receiving warm meals, and Maria had become a symbol of hope for many. One evening, as Maria finished preparing meals for distribution, she received a message from an unknown number. When she opened it, her heart nearly stopped. It was a video message from Lionel Messi. "Maria," he said with a warm smile, "I've been following everything you've been doing. You took what was given to you and turned it into something even bigger. That's incredible." Tears welled up in Maria's eyes as she listened. "I wanted to do something special for you," Messi continued. "There's a restaurant space in the city that I've invested in. It needs someone passionate, someone who understands the value of food and community. Someone like you." Maria gasped, her hands shaking. "I want you to run it," Messi said. "This is your chance to build something of your own. A restaurant where you can not only cook amazing food but also continue helping others." Maria covered her mouth in shock. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. A restaurant of her own? It was beyond anything she had ever dreamed of. Messi's message ended with one final sentence. You changed your life, Maria. Now go change even more. Maria fell to her knees, overwhelmed with gratitude. This wasn't just an opportunity, it was the beginning of a new chapter, a way to keep paying forward the kindness she had received. With Messi's help, the restaurant opened months later. Casa Esperanza, House of Hope, quickly became more than just a place to eat. It became a community hub, offering meals to those in need, job opportunities to struggling families, and cooking classes for young people who had dreams just like Maria once did. And one day, as Maria stood in her kitchen, watching the staff prepare food, she noticed a young homeless woman standing hesitantly by the entrance with two small children, just as she had once stood, desperate for help. Without hesitation, Maria walked over, held out her hand, and smiled. Come in, she said. You're safe here. The woman's eyes filled with tears as she stepped inside. At that moment, Maria realized something. Her story had come full circle. She had once been the one receiving kindness. Now, she was the one giving it. And it all started with one simple act of generosity from Lionel Messi. As she looked up at the sign above her restaurant, she knew this was just the beginning. Because when kindness is passed on, it never ends. And Maria would make sure of that. Maria couldn't believe how far she had come. Just over a year ago, she had been on the streets with her children, unsure of where their next meal would come from. Now, she was standing in the center of her very own restaurant, overseeing a team of cooks, servers, and volunteers, all working together to feed both paying customers and those in need. Casa Esperanza was more than just a restaurant, it was a beacon of hope for the community. Every morning, Maria would wake up before dawn, ensuring the kitchen was ready for the day. The restaurant served breakfast, lunch, and dinner, with a special program where people in need could get a warm meal free of charge. Instead of feeling like a charity case, guests were treated with dignity and respect, just like any other customer. Maria had lived through the humiliation of asking for help, and she was determined to make sure no one else ever felt that way. One day, as she was going through receipts in the office, one of her employees, Javier, knocked on the door. Maria, you might want to come out here. We have a special guest. Curious, Maria wiped her hands on her apron and stepped out into the dining area. The restaurant was busy as usual, with families enjoying meals and volunteers helping distribute food to those in need. But then, she saw him. Lionel Messi was sitting at a table near the back, quietly observing everything. Maria's heart pounded as she made her way toward him. Senor Messi, she said, her voice trembling. You're here. Messi stood up and smiled. I had to see it for myself. Maria felt the weight of the moment hit her all at once. She had always wanted to thank him in person, to show him how much his kindness had changed her life. Now, standing in front of him, she struggled to find the right words. Messi gestured around the restaurant. You did this, Maria. I just gave you a push. But this is all you. Tears welled up in her eyes. I wouldn't be here without you. Messi shook his head. You would have found a way. I just helped speed things up. Maria wiped her eyes and took a deep breath. Please, sit. Let me cook for you. Messi chuckled. I would love that. She rushed back into the kitchen, her heart pounding with excitement. This was her moment. She wanted to make a meal that represented everything she had been through, everything she had built. She carefully prepared a dish her mother used to make when times were tough, a simple but delicious stew, rich with flavors of home and comfort. As she plated it, she thought about all the times she had gone to bed hungry, the nights she had spent crying, the struggles she had endured to get to this very moment. And then, she carried the dish out to Messi. Placing the plate in front of him, she said, This is a meal that kept me going when I had nothing. Now, I want to share it with you. Messi took a bite, closed his eyes, and nodded. It's perfect. Maria let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Messi looked around at the restaurant again, watching the families, the volunteers, the staff, all people who had found a place at Casa Esperanza. "You know," he said, "I think we need more places like this." Maria tilted her head. "What do you mean?" Messi smiled. "What if we opened more? In different cities? Places where people need help, where they need a fresh start, just like you did." Maria's eyes widened. "You want to expand?" Messi nodded. "If you're up for it." Maria felt tears sting her eyes again. She had started this restaurant to give back, to make sure no one else had to experience the kind of suffering she had endured. Now, Messi was offering her the chance to do it on an even bigger scale. She looked around at the restaurant she had built with so much love, then back at Messi. "I'm ready," she said. Messi grinned. "Then let's get to work." The expansion of Casa Esperanza was unlike anything Maria had ever imagined. With Messi's support, new locations began to open in different cities, each one following the same philosophy: good food, dignity for all, and a commitment to helping those in need. Maria traveled to each new restaurant personally, training staff and ensuring that every location had the same warmth and compassion that had made the original so special. Along the way, she met people just like her, single mothers struggling to make ends meet, homeless families looking for hope, young people searching for opportunity. She hired them, trained them, and gave them the same second chance she had been given. One evening, Maria returned to the original Casa Esperanza after weeks of travel. As she stepped inside, she saw a familiar sight: a woman standing at the entrance with two young children, hesitating, unsure if she was welcome. Maria walked over with a warm smile. "Come in," she said, just as she had said to countless others before. "You're safe here." The woman broke down in tears, thanking her as she stepped inside. And at that moment, Maria knew this was her purpose. Her story had come full circle. She had once been the one receiving kindness. Now, she was the one giving it. And it all started with one act of generosity from Lionel Messi. As she looked up at the sign above the restaurant, she knew this was just the beginning. Because when kindness is passed on, it never ends. And Maria would make sure of that. Months passed, and the impact of Casa Esperanza continued to grow. What had started as a single restaurant had become a movement. Maria had gone from being a homeless mother struggling to feed her children to a leader in a nationwide effort to change lives. Every morning, she woke up with a renewed sense of purpose, knowing that the work she was doing mattered. But despite all the success, Maria never forgot where she came from. One afternoon, as she was helping prepare meals in the kitchen, a young boy peeked through the door. He looked about 10 years old, his clothes worn, his face tired but curious. Maria recognized that look instantly. It was the same look her son had when they were homeless. A mix of hunger and hope. She wiped her hands on her apron and walked over to him. "Hola, Carino," she said softly. "Are you hungry?" The boy nodded shyly. Maria knelt down so she was at eye level with him. "Where's your family?" The boy hesitated before answering. "It's just me and my mom," he said. "She's outside. She's scared to come in." Maria's heart clenched. She knew that fear. She had felt it herself, the fear of asking for help, the fear of being turned away. She stood up, took the boy's hand, and led him outside. Sitting on the curb was a woman, her shoulders slumped in exhaustion, her arms wrapped protectively around a younger child. When she saw Maria approaching, she tensed, as if expecting to be told to leave. Maria knelt beside her. "You don't have to be afraid," she said gently. "Come inside. You and your children are welcome here." Tears welled in the woman's eyes. "I don't have money," she whispered. Maria smiled. "Neither did I when I first walked into Messi's restaurant." The woman's eyes widened in shock. "Messi? You knew him?" Maria nodded. "He changed my life. And now, I want to do the same for you." She reached out her hand. The woman hesitated for only a second before taking it. As Maria led the family inside, she felt a warmth spread through her chest. This was why she had fought so hard. To be able to give back, to offer hope where there once was none. That evening, as Maria stood by the window, watching the mother and her children eat their first warm meal in days, her phone buzzed. It was a message from Messi. "I saw the news about the new restaurant opening. You're doing incredible things, Maria. I'm proud of you." Maria smiled, wiping a tear from her cheek as she typed a response. "I learned from the best." She set her phone down and looked around Casa Esperanza. The sound of laughter filled the air, plates clinked, and families sat together, eating meals they never thought they'd have. Messi had given her a second chance. Now, she was passing it on. And she would continue doing so for as long as she could. Because kindness never ends, it only multiplies. And sometimes, all it takes is one person believing in you to change your life forever.